Hey everybody, Onepeg here. Got a little bit of a headache, so bear with me if the narration seems like it's a little bit labored. I don't know. Anyway, wanted to continue the video that we started with the first 4 Gunsmith tasks, although quick correction for Gunsmith 2. Since I made the video, there was an update to a whole bunch of AK parts and stuff, which I posted in the community posts. You still need the B11 and the 60-round mag and everything, but instead of needing to add a whole bunch of other crazy parts, you can now get away with just using a stubby foregrip and the regular old metal stock on the 74U. Just fold the gun and take off the muzzle brake, and you should be good to go. That's it. Okay? Anyway, on to Gunsmith 5. Gunsmith 5 is a DVL, and it's a pretty standard build. There's no real way to get around the DVL, and if you want to do this thing early, as opposed to waiting until you get to skier level 4 to buy one, you have to get one off of the flea market. However, the reward for this is 200,000 rubles, so it should make up for the cost of all of the parts and everything, except for possibly the cost of the Night Force components. The requirements for this say 23 or greater, ergo 400 or less recoil, 2,000 or greater sighting range, and 6.6 kilograms or less in weight, plus a tactical device. The cheapest possible tactical device is just to use the TBR NC Star TAC. Takes care of that, no problem. One of the tricks for this that people have a tendency to overlook when they're trying to hand this task in, they can't figure out what's going on, you have to take the mag out. Unfortunately, the only scope right now that will give you a 2,000 meter sighting range is the Night Force 34mm. So in order to be able to fit this on, you have 2 options for Night Force rings. You have this Night Force one-piece mag mount 34mm set, and you also have this KHF IEA Mill Optics 34mm mag mount. As opposed to attempting to buy this on the flea market, you have the option of either bartering the IEA Mill Optics 34mm rings for 2 DVDs from Mechanic, or if you would rather go with the one-piece mag mount from Night Force, you can trade this to Jaeger for 1 propane tank, but it is not available until Jaeger 2. Now, as you can see here, the other option would be to try and pay cash for it as opposed to using a propane tank. So I would highly recommend using the propane tank barter trade instead of spending 280,000 rubles, because a propane tank is only 26k, considerably less expensive. Now, if you went to try and pay cash for the Night Force scope itself, it's about 92k, but you can trade it to Jaeger for a power bank, 2 magnets, and 1 UV lamp, of which the power bank is 30k, the magnets are approximately 10k apiece, depending on when you get them, and the ultraviolet lamp is about 9 to 10k as well. So all in, that puts you at half the cost of what someone would try to get you for retail. So that's it. You put the gun together, add your Night Force scope, make sure the mag is out, and hand it in. Done. On to Gunsmith 6. Gunsmith 6 is usually the point in time that everybody ends up stopping and saying, hold up, this is crazy. The problem with the RSASS task is that in order to be able to buy an RSASS, you have to get to Peacekeeper level 3 if you don't want to have to pay cash outright on the flea market for it. However, Peacekeeper's barter for this is for dog tags, so make sure that you hold on to them if you're going to try and go this route. However, Peacekeeper's barter trade for this, in order to be able to get it once you have level 3 Peacekeeper, is for 20 level 15 plus dog tags. So make sure that if you're planning on going the route of bartering for it, that you are saving the dog tags that you collect if and when you collect them. Yes, that means that you have to get PvP kills. I'm sorry. Of course, your other option is to go in with a group of friends that are above the level 15 and just shoot them, collect their dog tags, because you can collect the dog tags of friends and then hand them in for that sweet, sweet dosh. Failing that, you have the option of going to the flea market and purchasing one, which, if you haven't noticed, the price of the RSASS keeps continuing to go up, and the reason why is because of the task reward. This task gives a reward of 3 physical Bitcoin, which right now retail back to Therapist for about 500,000 rubles apiece. So the quest reward itself is 1.5 million rubles. Naturally, the market tends to follow in suit with stuff like this and charges more as a result. Now, there are a lot of different ways to get this one done. Here is what I would suggest in this case. The idea behind this build is that it's obviously trying to use the stock parts as much as possible on the RSASS as it sits, which means that instead of changing the stock out for something like a Mo carbine stock, we're just going to use the PRS that's on it. The 30mm rings are not obtainable via barter for any of the traders. They are able to be purchased from Jaeger level 2. The EOTech Voodoo, which is the scope that gives you the 1500 or greater sighting range, is obtainable via purchase from Jaeger level 3. The Remington RAHG 4-inch guide is obtainable from Mechanic level 2. And the RK6 is obtainable from Skier level 2. Now, there is no real getting around the EOTech Voodoo. And in this case, also, I included in this build a Stark AR rifle grip, which sells for about $30K on the market. This, plus the cost of the Hybrid 46 and the DT mount, if you're going to pay cash for the RSASS, will probably put you around 1.2 to 1.4 million rubles, depending on what you're able to collect the RSASS for. But this is the build that will get you there. And most of the parts are obtainable from vendors without you having to run off to the flea. If you're trying to get this done early, buying the Voodoo and the AR pistol grip, the Stark AR, is something that you can kind of play with. However, you do need to make sure that you keep the ergonomics number where it needs to be. So as long as you have 21 ergo or higher on the pistol grip, you're good to go. So if you can find something like a Graal S or a PSG, which will give you another 4 ergo points, leaving you a little bit more room to play, then so be it. You can also possibly end up doing something other than the Hybrid 46 and DT mount combo, should you so choose, if you have something laying around. But again, make sure that you're going to make the ergo, because the DT mount and the Hybrid 46 tend to be one of the friendliest ergo combinations for guns like this when you're trying to suppress them. There's a lot of different ways to shake this, and it basically comes down to looking at the pistol grip, the stock, and the suppressor, as those are going to have the largest hit when it comes to ergonomics as it relates to recoil. So if you need to play with it a little bit, play with it. I mean, that's what this is for. But this is probably the least expensive option that you're going to have, aside from just waiting until you get to the point where you can buy all of this stuff from the vendors for way cheaper than you're going to get on the market. All right, on to Gunsmith 7. So this is the build for Gunsmith Part 7, and it's pretty straightforward. I would highly recommend, even though this is available for people at level 19, I would highly recommend getting to level 20 so that you have access to Mechanic level 2, because it will be exponentially easier for you to do this with Mechanic level 2 than attempt to do it any other way. The reason why is because you have no option. You must have an SGA 870 stock in order to be able to make the numbers that you need, and that is only available unless you're going to try to go to the flea and get fleeced. This is the only way to get it, by barter for Mechanic. Secondarily to that, if you have Mechanic level 2, chances are you also have Skier level 2, so things like the Remington Tactical Choke and the 4.1-inch M-Lock Guide and the RK6 should not be an issue for you anymore. The other thing that you need is the Magpul Mo 874 stock, which is the slide here. That slide is also a barter for Mechanic level 2. And the barters themselves are pretty cheap, so you could, if you wanted to, just buy whatever you needed off of the flea market. The 870 slide is 1 rec bat, which is super easy and cheap to get. And the SGA stock is 2 AA batteries and 2 D batteries. That's it. So all in for those parts, you're probably like maybe 50,000 rubles. Not bad, especially compared to the last task that we just had to do that was going to be like 1.4 million. So, 50,000 is a whole lot better. Just make sure that the internal mag, the 4-round internal mag, is empty, because they tend to not want any ammunition in them whatsoever. You have the option of using the Surefire XC1 flashlight, and instead of the tactical choke, if you really wanted to, you can use the ME cylinder muzzle adapter and the GK02 muzzle brake, which looks like this. Either way, you can hand it in as is, and you're good to go. Okay, on to Gunsmith Part 8. Gunsmith Part 8 is an AKM build that requires 350 or less of recoil, 45 ergonomics, 800 or greater sighting range, a suppressor. It must have a Fortis Shift tactical grip, and it must also use a 30-round PMAG. The cheapest and easiest way to get an 800 or greater sighting range is to use a Prism 2.5. Prism 2.5 is purchasable from Skier level 2. And since, again, you have to be level 19 to start this quest, I would highly recommend being at least level 20 so that you have access to Mechanic, because Mechanic level 2, again, makes this incredibly easier. Now, again, you have to be level 19 to start this task, so I would recommend at least being level 20. Since the last task was going to be so much easier being level 20, you should already be level 20 by the time that you're doing this one, because no one wants to get fleeced by the flea market. And honestly, with the XP rewards that have happened from the last few, you should have gotten to level 20 by now anyway. So the Prism and the Compact Mount are both purchasable from Skier level 2. The Fortis Shift Tactical Grip is something that is required in order to be able to build this. This is Peacekeeper level 4, which obviously doesn't come for much later in the game. So this is one of those things that you might have to eat the 100,000 ruble price tag. There's really no getting around it because it is absolutely required. It is possible that by now you've gotten lucky enough to be able to get one to drop, but that's it. There is no barter. There's nothing else you can do. You can just buy one. Now, there have been some changes since I made and built and handed in this gun that actually are a little bit more user-friendly now. The buffs that they recently did to guns in this game, especially on the AK side, ended up making it so you no longer need the AKM and PT1. Instead, you can get away with using just the standard SP20 stock that came on the gun to begin with, black plum, wooden, whatever, it doesn't matter, and you can use a butt pad. So this cheapens the build ever so slightly. However, you still, because of the ergonomics requirement, have to use a DT mount and a hybrid 46 because those, again, are the most ergo-friendly. You will need to use an RK3, which is skier level 3, so to get around that, you may have to go to the flea market yourself and buy something. But at this point, you should also have gotten enough rep and money siphoned through Peacekeeper to buy the RS-47, which is our handguard here. So while this build has gotten a little bit less expensive, the RK3 and the Shift are probably going to be the most costly pieces here because they're not obtainable early on, level 19, level 20, when you'd want to be able to do this. So that means we have to go to the Flea. In the case of the Shift, it's going to be somewhere around 100K. In the case of the RK3 pistol grip, you're looking at somewhere around 44,000 rubles. So all in, you're probably somewhere around 150K on marketed parts. But the rest of the stuff you should be able to get from the vendors without much of an issue, as long as, like I said, you're at level 20 and have the rep and moved the money through the traders themselves. Now, as a reminder, this build's reward is 2 physical Bitcoin. So even though you might be, 150, maybe even 200K on the bad day into this build, you should be able to hand in those physical Bitcoin for somewhere around 1 million rubles. So this one actually nets a pretty substantial amount of profitability. So if you have the investment cash, I guess, to put into this, the back end should be pretty rewarding. All right, and we'll sneak in one more, which is Gunsmith 9. Okay, so this build requires Zenitco parts for an AKS-74N. Make sure that you're buying an AKS-74N and not an AK-74N. They are different. It has to be an AKS. Okay? Now that we're all on the same page with that, the other thing that you want to make sure that you do is remove the mag from the gun. If you try to hand the gun in, they will not take it with a mag in the gun, so take it out. All of these parts are purchasable from skiers level 2 and 3 vendor options. But if you're doing this at level 20, which is when you're able to get this task, you will not have access to the skier level 3 stuff. So the skier level 3 things are the Zenit RK3 pistol grip, which we just saw on the last build, the B33 dust cover, the B10M, and the Zenit Classica stock, the PT3. Now, for those of you that have been following with the video series, you know that in the early game, the PT lock itself tends to sell for like 150,000 rubles, and no one wants to spend that kind of money early on. However, now that we have skier level 2, which you should have by now, we don't have to worry about that anymore because it's nice and cheap. None of the skier level 3 parts that I just mentioned are things that you can barter for, so you have to go to the flea and buy them if you're trying to do this early. But if you remember, our last task netted us about 1 million rubles worth of Bitcoin cash. So if you want to just eat the cost and reap the XP, go for it. The XP reward for this, in this case, is 17,300 experience, which is actually just shy of half a level for those of you at level 20 trying to do this task, which is not nothing. It's pretty good. Okay, guys, so that's what I've got for these last 5 builds. I'll be looking at the next handful, possibly getting us all the way through the final build in the next video. Thanks so much for sticking this out, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Thanks. Peace.